Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 216th episode of Book of Hours, our first run on YouTube, playing as the artist. Picasso? I'll give you Picasso. The artist came to Hush House to shape and share a history of primal, ultimate, unprecedented experience, but you can complete the game by recording any history. You might wish to begin your studies with the Bosque Wisdom. Data was a start, the Surrealist Manifesto, a step along the road, but only a step. The road goes nowhere unless it goes into the wood, and that's not a road we can and that's a road we can only walk in the dark. Wait, no, not in the dark, in blood. Hip deep in blood. Oh, shut up, give it to me, I'll write it. So it's been a bit of a trying couple of days. I should just offer some explanation to one of the viewers here, but it looks like the Excel sheet that I had worked out some skill improvements on didn't save properly, so it's lost. Now the good news is I did find some handwritten notes, so I think I can piece the details together. That was a bit trying. And then this is a little weird. I mean, unfortunately, there's a certain asymmetry to communication on YouTube, and I can completely understand if somebody doesn't want to respond in comments to this, and I get it. But I also feel that I should at least address to them. There's a comment that I was definitely on the fence in terms of, knowing exactly where the person was coming from. It definitely could be read as a, an unfriendly one. And so I sort of expressed, that I suspected that it might have been something that someone was trying to sort of tell a joke with, but unfortunately it was hard to take as a joke. Like, ultimately it made me not feel great. So the trouble with that is that, number one, this is a video that's going out to multiple people. That's really just me following up with one person. The real difficulty with sort of saying to someone, look, that didn't make me feel very good, is that when somebody apologizes, of course you know that the intent wasn't malicious. And so, of course, the whole need to address that sort of stuff goes away. So I felt, at the very least, I figure to the viewer that, I had that exchange with, it looks like the, comment was deleted, and I understand why. I appreciate the clarification. And I feel that I should at least say that I read it, I understand, I appreciate it, and all I can really offer is that the number of sort of comments telling me I'm playing the game wrong, or at the very least operating on that assumption, or people telling me to hurry up, or just generally the sort of stuff which it was very pleasant not to have to deal with Cultist Simulator, that's been kind of growing lately. And if it's something that's unambiguously sort of hostile, it's just something I delete and go without. And obviously, for someone who's not being, overt, if there's another chance for an interpretation on it, obviously, that I can at least try and give the reply to. But I appreciate it. I know it's never fun. In fact, some people just never want to apologize on the internet, and just, a minor thing will turn into a big thing. I appreciate it. I am sorry that I can't see the humor in that. Unfortunately, this is kind of what the consequence of one of the backseating features is, right? That apparently I can't take a joke anymore. So sorry to start off in such a gloomy way, especially for those of you who don't know what's going on. Like I said, obviously with this context, I don't know if the person would ever want to communicate again through a comment or along those lines or not. But I definitely feel that I wanted to at least offer some kind of reassurance that I saw it, and try not to hold grudges or anything like that. As long as everybody can sort of find a balance, we're good. So but the good news is that Book of Hours is a very relaxing and charming game, and so over the next 26 minutes or so, I will find my happy place again. I am, however, a little lost in terms of what I was doing on this playthrough, so let's take the time to figure it out. It doesn't look like there's any timers going. I have lots of elements of the soul, which worries me a little bit. We are investigating the 9-wink clock, so be it. I could get a bunch of stuff from Crowcross Sands and the moor, but I don't really see the point. I wind up throwing it all away at this point, which again makes me feel a little crummy as far as the playthrough goes, because there's really not a whole lot that I'm doing. But yeah, let's run ahead and investigate the different items in the house and see what's happening. The 9-wink clock, the most effective and irrefutable alarm clock ever to grace the house. The alarm can only be switched off with a particular rotation of the key. Lazier librarians have found it easier to just let the thing run down. Alright, so the 9-wink clock, I believe, was up here. Yes. So there's a number of different things that we can interact with. I think I'll just interact with the chairs. I think I've done the restful seat before, but I'll do the restful and the contemplative seat just so I can say that I did it. A dawn-colored seat for a solar congregation. Sit in serenity. So again, the real blocker right now is Hyksos or the ability or the extra lessons learned to be able to sort of level up some of the things that I want. Now, for those of you that have been following along with the House of Light beta on the Twitch channel, and then I do upload those to YouTube, but I mean, again, they're 3-hour-long videos. They're not necessarily the sort of thing that people necessarily like to sit through. But one of the ways that House of Light actually addresses this particular... there's two ways that it addresses the particular problem that I'm running into on this playthrough. One, it will... Well, there's already calling cards. I think this may actually be added as part of the base game now. I'm not 100% sure, just because I do know there's a couple of remnants from the House of Light expansion that I think are sort of carryovers. So, for instance, I believe these... I don't think this stuff is visible on people's Tree of Wisdoms yet. I could be wrong on that. But I think I know for a fact there's at least a few things in my folders which basically are sort of present but disabled. And then when I enable the beta, those features come back. So for instance, when you play House of Light, and I hope you all get a chance to, there'll be a lighthouse here, which clearly there isn't. So, and a few other features. But yeah, so there's the calling cards, and again, whether that's part of the base game now or whether this is a holdover from House of Light, the ability to bring visitors back is a nice one, because one of the challenges for me when I want to try and satisfy all the visitors' interests, the fact that I have to choose between Hyksos and achieving some sort of end in an event that I want can actually be a very heavy penalty. In this case here, I think only had one visitor with Hyksos, and then we're sort of paying for that many episodes later. And I really would like to be able to read those Hyksos books for reasons that will be apparent a little bit later. Hopefully a little bit later, at least. So the calling card is a nice one. And then on top of that, there's the salons. Now, the salons have lots of interactions, so there's lots of new things to learn about the different characters, and we just recently learned that there are special interactions between specific characters. So there are sort of mini stories that get unlocked in between them. But if you do the salon well, if you sort of steer the conversation and you're a good host, this will reward you with lessons. And so you can do those once a season, and you do actually get a few lessons out of those. So if you manage the salons well, it's something that will allow you to sort of advance your skills even further. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it trivializes the game. You're still going to run into some challenges, because in addition to sort of needing to make all of the different foods and things like that, if you want to follow the Lighthouse Institute, that's still done with some of the visitors, and some of the visitors need to become inspired, which only happens through the events. And so you're going to need a few seasons of helping people to sort of achieve the Institute goals. But what's nice is that House of Light seems to have addressed some of the things that maybe keep me from making the kinds of progress that I would want in this particular playthrough. But it hasn't done so in such a way that I get an easy time with the skills, or it's not a case where it's not going to make things too easy in terms of things I wanted in the base game, because in the end I have sort of an extended goal a little bit further out. So it's a rather nice little job that they've done balancing it. I should mention that it is an early beta that I've played. Clearly it's still in development. We've got about a month before the DLC is released. But it is something that I kind of wanted to comment on, because running into what I've got right now, it's actually very interesting to see how some of the choices that have gone into Book of Hours specifically speak to some of the situations we're running into on this playthrough here. The contemplative seat, perch here to meditate on the mysteries of dawn. Light like the ever-burning wheel rolls all our sins away. They fly forgotten as dream dies at the opening day. All right. Now, I think I already did I think I counted these as art. I mean, the game counts them as art. I think it was just going to be furniture. So let's carry on. Onto the snug chair. Is the a wicker chair with a soft white lap blanket for chilly evenings. Is the blanket bearskin? Polar bear? It might be, but it's softer than one would expect. Now, I have been wanting to hang on to the old moment, so we will carry on with that. And the one thing I do feel a little bit bad about in terms of the playthrough right now is that because I've got all the elements of the soul, because I've got all of the the skills that I currently have. I've got all of the lessons that I can get. I'm really waiting for two moments in a season. One is the arrival of a new visitor, hopefully getting Hyksos. And the next is waiting for the arrival of and the next is waiting for an offer from Oriflammes. And in between all of that, I just wait for the next, I'm just kind of reading furniture items and that. So there is a way to force Numa, and I will force Numa if I have to, but we are about due for one, so I'm trying to hold the faith. So investigate the object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. Comfortable garden chair, amateurly varnished, characterfully stained. Shadows shift, sunbars follow. Alright, on to the soft blue sofa. This is in the Gulskry Tower Valentine's room. In his youth, Baron Valentine inclined to religion, and he made pilgrimages to holy sites on the continent. After he made his final pilgrimage to Fermier Abbey, the dreams began, of blood seeping from the earth, of a vast and pulsing wheel crushing the temples of men, and, which troubled him most, of twisted birds shrieking in pain, growing like fruit in the branches of an ancient yew. One of the things that I've been kind of intrigued by in terms of Book of Hours lately, Ambrose Westcott ordered the destruction of Valentine's bed for reasons he did not choose to articulate. Much later, Brian Levinson had this sofa installed so he could nap here. The painter's stool, a comfortable enough perch. So, the gods from stone, I sort of feel like were reasonably... I don't know if I could say reasonably well known, but the gods from stone were sort of something that I was sort of at least aware of, and maybe I gained a bit of an appreciation in terms of the menace that they might have from playing Book of Hours. And I always sort of feared and, kept away from the gods from nowhere, although again, I'm at least getting a bit intrigued in terms of reading about them here. And it does sort of, I think it's kind of interesting. It gives me a certain degree of sympathy for the Suppression Bureau, sort of feeling like we're in between these two rather troubling possibilities, right? We've got the gods from nowhere, which don't necessarily seem... they don't seem good, right? I don't think anybody wants to touch the crown growth. I don't think anybody wants to, say hello to the mare in the tree or the apple bright or anything like that. But the gods from stone are sort of described as sort of plague and pestilence. And, with that in mind, it's also a, something kind of it's challenging and menacing. And the idea that the gods from stone might return, perhaps something we haven't necessarily run into too much here, but it's something that's been suggested, does sort of make me wonder, in terms of some of these alliances that you'll see, or at least some of these interactions that you have with the gods from nowhere, whether adepts see this as sort of a necessary evil in order to prevent something worse from happening. And of course, whether or not those particular deals wind up being the sorts of things that bring the kind of hardship. I mean, in the end, right, you make that deal and you need to make sure that you're getting your end of it, and that there isn't sort of a monkey's paw situation emerging. So, I mean, I'm definitely quite captivated by the hours, the traditional ones that we're familiar with, the Colonel, the Watchman, and so on and so forth. But I'm also beginning to sort of appreciate this this very precarious position between the other two sets, which it's probably not right to call them the two sets, but hopefully I'm for the lack of the specialized terms, I hope I'm at least sort of making the division clear enough. Gods from stone, gods from nowhere is something sort of separate. And it's something that's always just sort of dangling out of reach. It's something that if you look, you can see more of inside of Book of Hours, but I'm definitely intrigued to sort of pull that thread a little bit harder. All right. Someone has doggedly cleaned bird droppings and paint from this, not once but many times. The fabric is splotched and discolored. The varnish of the wood is streaked like rain. All right, I don't think there's anything else in this room. And we have a restful garden chair. We'll read it just because we can, but there's not too much waiting for us in the... Isdwulf inherited his father Valentin's madness, and was found unfit to inherit, so his sister Ava held the isle in his stead. When his fits of violence became uncontrollable, he was confined here in the tower, where his sister would visit him 3 times a week until his escape sometime in the late 1720s. Ilse's ultimate fate remains unknown. Restful garden chairs sit here and listen to the trees grow or the leaves fall. References differ, inlaid with green-stained bone. And not much for us here. I think I may have already checked Valentine's Memorial, but we'll check it out again. Valentine died 2 centuries ago. This stone is much newer, more like 2 decades old. Brian Levinson, 9th librarian of the house, often spoke of his sympathy for Valentine de Wolf. He commissioned this memorial stone in 1914, but by the time it arrived, he had volunteered as a medical officer in the Great War. He never returned, he never saw this memorial, and it became his own. Alright, Lesser Bridge, Brancrew Jail, built in 1896 at the behest of Nocturnal Branch to contain troubles unseemly and occult. A mere 6 years later, after the Ortuccio incident, the branch itself, came itself to be considered unseemly and occult, and its functions were absorbed into the Suppression Bureau, but the jail still stands. Over the gate is the Bureau's motto, Alice si licit, tibi non licit, commonly rendered as, it is permitted to us, it is not permitted to you. The jail yard. The jail was nicknamed the Cucurbit for the alchemist's flask that distills and refines. Prisoners would become better versions of themselves, realigned to responsibility. Hence, though it would have been much safer to confine the more potent inmates to their sealed cells, Governor Collars insisted that they should be allowed fresh air and exercise. Oops. Jail hall. Here the guards and the prisoners would take their meals. Sometimes Collars, too, would descend from his tower and discuss philosophy with poisoners, ethics with Antaeans, theology with Labites. Afterwards, he would generally burn his notes. So we do have a chair here. Spartan chair. The cushion has been removed, perhaps as an act of petty revenge. Hard librarians value hard chairs. Do we have any other furniture to investigate? I'll take a look at the lacquered bone chess set. I think we already know what this will say, the smirking royalty, but I'll double check. Lacquered bone chess set. Born of battles, the White Queen and the Black King are both scowling, but the Black Queen and the White King are both grinning delightedly. And the mop and bucket. Galvanized steel enriched with the stains of a dozen years of methodical mopping. Very, very, very faintly, even after all these years, the unmistakable yeasty, marshy odor of prophet slime. Onto the kitchen. There are no hours at Brandkrug, Collars used to say, even before he was governor of Brandkrug Jail, when he was only secretary vigilant of the Curia. By way of reminder, the hands were confiscated from every timepiece within the prison walls. The warders could still rely on the chimes of the great clock in the abbey spire, but it did make life harder for the cooks. So we do have the kitchen bowls. Always a fun one to read. I don't think there's anything in terms of furniture for us to interact with, so this is really it. Cake time! It is not yet time for cake. Down we go, the jail cellar. The entrance to the subcellar was barred, locked, chained, warded, both physically and otherwise. Whatever was kept down there, they took it extremely seriously. It looks very much as if the questing worms broke the seals drawn by the power below. It looks very much as if they regretted it. So we have lots of things to interact with in this room, but just about everything will be consumed. So I'm going to take a look at the serpent-styled glass, and I'm going to take a look at the saw, but I'm actually going to do it in that other order. Saw, eternally useful, though not much use for librarians most of the time. What's tangled in these teeth? So carved snakes writhe up the frame. A prominent inscription reads, "To the librarian Willem in earnest of our wager." The inscription is repeated on the base of the sandglass in Sanskrit, and indeed the style is Eastern, though I think somewhere further than India. Now, of course, if we compare that to the serpent glass we find here, carved snakes writhe down the frame. A prominent inscription reads, "To the librarian Gervenius in earnest of our wager." Sorry, Gervinus. The inscription is repeated on the base of the sandglass in Sanskrit, and indeed the style is Eastern, though I think somewhere further than India. And if we take a look, Willem Harries, this bust is cast in highly polished bronze, a niche with a plaque who brought a key long lost. And Gervinus van Loren, this bust is cast in highly polished bronze, and who returned to complete what he began. Willem Harries, sixth librarian, priest and nyctodromist, whose end has always remained obscure. Gervinus van Loren, 11th librarian of Hush House, an enigmatic recluse and reluctant ally of the Suppression Bureau, as skilled at closing ways as his predecessor Harries was at opening them. And I notice oh, here it is. I was going to say the old moments seem to have vanished, but... Alright, we can read the loading dock here. The supplies came in from every continent that the seas touch, from the bounds and beyond. Now and then prisoners would try to escape, but the sea is always hungry. And the oubliette. Here, in a vessel shaped by fire and fate, George Collars can find a flame in human flesh, a blazing shadow of a blazing future, a name of greed and time. Green called it the sun's bastard grandchild. Van Loren warned of the second dawn's first spark, but Collars spoke of it reverently as the leashed flame's true heir. Here we have the staff room. The warders at Brandkrug were a cut above your usual prison warder, former bureau constables, repentant no, turncoat Tragulari, veterans of the Legion de Sul. When the end came, none of that mattered, but here for a while, when the winter storms battered the walls, they hunkered close to this glowing stove to share tea and comradeship and stories of their very different lives. Severe chair on fussy marsh green upholstery. This chair is innocent of chairly secrets. So we'll wait a second before interacting with the staff armchair. I'll also see if there's anything I can get out of the tiny potted tree. Okay, I don't want to dissect the leaf, so keep your leafy secrets for now. Staff armchair, polished by the posteriors of dozens of loafing prison guards. For a great many years, this chat sat below a dartboard. The leather is pocked with the marks of occasional misses, or just possibly assassination attempts. I don't think I get to move, or to interact with any of these, so on we go to the adept cell. 77 days in the cucurbit was considered enough to soften the passions of the most unrepentant adept. After that, they were usually charged and tried in closed court, very occasionally released, sometimes taken upstairs for one of Collar's experimental interviews. The prison stool, a cheerful lavender color, possibly to encourage rehabilitative enthusiasm. Someone has scratched a series of tally marks down one leg. 77 days. Oh, I won't light the candle. I guess I did look at the, well, you know what, we'll take a look at Julian Cosley again. I do like this description as well, so I'll read that again. Julian Cosley. Julian is known to be winter-long. At a prescribed date, his hour patron will ensure him a beautiful ending. But until then, he is even harder than most long to dispose of finally. That said, he is known to have been defeated by an ascendant long in the 1920s, and his true current status, diminished survivor, a determined memory, something else, is the subject of esoteric debate. Cosley spent time at Hush House in the 17th century, but this painting, though undated, is clearly much more recent. It is also signed by Cosley himself, a gift to an imprisoned admirer. Alice licet tibi non licet. To us it is permitted, to you it is not permitted, the motto of the Suppression Bureau. The story goes that Governor Collars used to keep another sign in his office with the motto of the Nocturnal Branch, the Bureau's predecessor, Redex malorum libertas est. If someone complained about Bureau policies, he would point to the sign to remind them that things could be worse. Eventually, it was pointed out to him that the root of all evils is liberty was an undiplomatic motto to display in a prison, and he grumpily retired the sign. All right, the long cell. The few long at Brandkrug were kept in cells triple buttressed with silver and steel and sanctioned spells. The Bureau knew their weaknesses, but never relied on them. This cell housed two immortals, an edge-long dyad. This would have required not only ferocious and eternal vigilance, but also frequent replacement of shattered furniture. So I can't remember if I've looked at these cudgels or not, but we'll take a look now. I think these also wind up giving some pretty interesting memories. So cudgels, Didju and St. Trog, very old iron cudgels, recently and heavily padded. Retrieved from Gladwin Lake and returned to the cell's occupants as a reward for good behavior. Now, I believe in this case here, these will be the same description for both items, but we have nothing but time, so yeah. I'll just read the one, but I will check both to be sure. Wasters, Darling Deer, and Father Turk. Wooden swords of recent manufacture, never used. Provided to occupants of the cell who clearly disdained and never used them. And finally, Captain Torg and Mistress Dearday, souvenirs of the East, heavily padded. treasured items left behind by the occupants of the cell during their inglorious career on the high seas, procured by Governor Collars as a gift for the occupants of the cell, in hope that it would induce better behavior. It has fallen. Dawn will come soon. I do need to make sure that I keep on top of the old moment. Now the good news is, it is another season, so it's possible we'll get a Numa, and it's possible we will get a visitor who knows Hyksos. What will it be? Tune in Wednesday for the next episode of Book of Hours, our run as the artist, first run on YouTube, and hopefully getting towards something that will allow us to get the Newman that I'm searching for. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.